So let's start with something a little bit different from, like the Monty Python said. Okay, and I mean the rocket science. Happily, I was selected as a flight surgeon for the lunar exploration simulation. And yeah, I mean the rocket science, and I mean literally, well, rocket science. And I was very privileged to have a talk, to spend some time with my friends doing some research on people, because I have some medical backgrounds with the biological backgrounds and so on. And I will be referring to the presentation about the Agile coaching and so on in the end, about the space technology and this heavily documented and heavily regulated environment. But I would like to show you some amazing photos that we did during the whole event. I won't get into the details. So basically, I would like to say that I was a builder, construction worker for the habitat, and I was building literally the whole habitat. I pretty look a little bit better with my suit on. So basically, she's a project manager for the whole project, and she was handling the responsibility for not only building the habitat, but also for thousands upon thousands and tasks that it is needed to create such a habitat in order to people to live in and to simulate the lunar exploration engineering. We were like exactly working 24 hours a day, because we were like creating the fiber wires, and then after a whole day of creating it, we were like went and create some furniture, and then after creating the furniture throughout the whole night, we went to go to put the fiber wires once again throughout the whole forest, because we had to, connect the lunar base simulation with the real stuff. So this is the guys who were helping me out with the creation. And now here starts the experiment. We are conducting experiments. We are self-inflicted some medical tests. We are doing a lot of fun stuff with the medical devices, with the whole spectrum of medical tests and so on. This is me, what's that? So we were having also a technology with the real rover, which simulates the whole environment on the Martian soil, and we were like having competitions, who is the best in order to get those points and to put it on the sheet. We broke things and we fixed it, and we had to document all the fixes and all the solutions we came up, and we had to wear those funny ECG monitors when we were going out. This is me with my friend, once again shirtless, and yeah, and this is the rover, our beloved rover. So we had to conduct tests. We had to drive the rover in blind, so without seeing from the video cameras and so on. So we had a communication, we had a protocol. We had a strict protocol. We used the pilot language with the rules, with the repeating the comments and so on. And we have to have constantly communicating rover habitat driver with the people who was outside on the extravehicular activity. Right now I'm starting a PhD thesis on real astronauts extravehicular activity on lunar soil. We tested microgravity. And it was fun, a lot of fun. And we had some experiments, very nice shot. My friend has made a terrific job for seeing that. And I was responsible also, this is the plan for our habitat. And I was responsible for also astronomical observation, the moon, lunar, and sun observation. I was also responsible for planting a seed, a microgravity experiment with the seeds that is holding and rising from the soil and so on. This is a sample from microgravity. We used RPM machine, random position machine. This spins in every direction, and it simulates the microgravity. Here's a control sample. Here's something. Here's an accelerometer that measures the waves and translation in every acceleration in every side. Here's a sample, and here's some nice photos. and the result. The result was that the microgravity samples were a little bit shorter, with completely different routes, completely different shapes, just because in the microgravity there's no up and down, and the roots is going to the water, and the leaves are straight up to the source of the light. This is our team, this is our rover, and hop in the talk about the agility, because the agility is the thing why we're here. Yeah, okay. So why you need an agile coach who happens to be an astronaut? So basically, all the time when I came to the company, because I'm also a computer scientist, so basically I worked as a software developer for a couple of years, then I changed my field of studies, and in the exactly the same time when I was learning, I was practicing software development and so on, and I become an agile coach. So basically, why do you need an agile coach? There's always a reason why my customers are like, oh, you're too expensive, you don't have time, you have something else. But it's always something that we can do by ourselves. And this is one of the common mistakes, because people, yes, of course, you can do it by yourself, and you can create your own stories. You can help with the backlog. You can have a product owner who is a great guy and who is decoupling the issues, who is creating these smaller ones, and he's decompositioning the backlog, and he's doing amazing, terrific job. Yes, you can reinvent the wheel. You can build the car from scratch. But even if it's not your job, probably you might want to go with someone who has better experience with that. And this is especially important when you have the space technology and very heavily regulated environment. I was working with the PCI in the financial institution during my computer science career, and I was very happy with that. And they had PCI regulations, which strictly shows you how you can conduct releases, how you can do your own stuff, and so on. So this is the environment from the government, because I was asked to lead the Polish government transition, and last year I was giving a talk about that here on exactly the same stage, on exactly the same time slot, so one before the keynote speaker. And from this experience I learned a lot. And especially when you have space government and when you have government units, when you have highly regulated organizations like banks, like government units, and when you have heavily documented environment, and this is very important, you can apply those things that is important in Scrum, that is important in Agile. The first thing, what is Scrum? Scrum is in its very basic thing. It's a to-do list with iteration. Yes, you can apply those philosophy in order to build a habitat, a lunar habitat even, and to create. When you have a team, and it doesn't matter how big team is. If you have one product owner, if you have several product owners working together on one backlog, which is a lunar simulation habitat with like 30 different, completely different systems, like life support systems, biological environment, chemical laboratory, computer science, technology, and EVA systems, and so on. And you have like 1,000 upon 1,000 issues. And yet, you can create a backlog, you can prioritize issues, and you can iterate over and over and over. And that mentality, that philosophy leads you to create and to do things better and better and better. Okay. Why you don't want to hire me and so on? My daily rate is, my hourly rate is kind of big, especially in Poland. And I'm a kind of outsider, so basically I won't go with your company for a long time. I would like to give you a fishing rod, not a fish. So I will help you. I will teach you how you can be a better how you can be a better Scrum Master, how you can be a better coach, how you can see those things and iterate and over and create this process and do your own job. Because I don't want to work for your company. And I'm not speaking right now for me. I'm speaking for all the consultants and all of my colleagues that are making exactly the same job right now. So basically, they will not work with your company. They will help you to learn, to teach you how you can benefit from hiring those guys who has an experience to solve your issues, the issues that you have encountered. So basically, you do when you refuse to hire such a person, such a consultant, so you invest your time. So you invest your money and you put a lot of efforts, and the outcome is pretty fairly low. Why? Because you try to give the assignments of project management issues or to the programmers, who is very new to that, and they would like to be an engineers. And as far as I know, because I was a computer programmer, I didn't like those programming issues and so on. By the way, for those who wasn't attending the first talk, here's the link, and when you put it in a browser, you will exactly get the same presentation. So basically, you waste your money. And I'm really sorry, but this is true. So basically, not hiring the consultant, and I'm not saying that this applies to every situation, but in the end, if you refuse to have someone who has a knowledge and experience and who have, like, I've been working with, right now, with 20, 25 companies, and I've seen a lot of problems within those companies. And you are focusing on only one, you are specializing, you are delivering, you are doing your own job, and you are great about this. But sometimes there are some problems that could be solved just by looking at the completely different perspective, with the different background, with the different experience and so on. And my job as a consultant is to be in every of those 25-ish or something like that companies and to see and connect the dots. So I learn from one company and apply those rules within the second company. And I run the experiments. So I tell, for example, the easiest example is how do you estimate? And everybody is like, estimation didn't work and so on. So I run the experiment. Do not estimate your issues for like three sprints. In the first company, in the second company, and the third company. And then I run the experiments with time estimation. So you do estimate in time, in minutes and hours and so on. In one company, second company, a third. And for the next experiment, I will run with the estimation in the business value. In one company, second company, and third company. And then with the story points, and exactly the same. And I will get the matrix of 12 simultaneously run experiments, and I compare those experiments, and I can cross-fit. So, for example, this company who have previously experimented with time, then I can say, you do not estimate in the next 2 sprints. And then the company who did not estimate their issues then can have the time estimation, and we can compare the exactly outcome of the experiment. In the science, I showed you before, it's called control samples and testing samples, and we can compare based on the real information. So when you apply those rules on the simple scale, so it looks like I came to your company, and I will tell, do time estimates, and week after, do not estimate, and week after, estimate in story points, and week after, estimates in business value. The period will be a little bit longer, so 3 sprints to have like stabilized progress and so on. But you can see from your perspective that I'm constantly changing my way of thinking and so on. But behind that, it's whole machine of conducting experiments, running it over and over, and giving you the best outcome for your organization. And when I learn, when I'm working with your company, when I'm working with your organization, and I'm learning your habits, I'm learning what you do. So basically, one of the experiments we were having on the habitat mission, lunar mission, was the isolation. How the 6 people, because we were having a crew of 6 people, react in complete isolation with the time delay with the responses, because, for example, we were like testing the lunar mission, so the delay is 1 second. But with the Mars missions, up to COM, and this habitat will simulate the Mars mission, the delay will be 40 minutes. 20 minutes to send the information and 20 minutes to receive the information. Those who've seen the Martian movie probably will know what I'm talking about. So basically, you get the isolation. And exactly the same thing with your company and with the teams, with the experiments we're doing. So we isolate from the outside world, and we are bringing the exactly thing that exactly in this moment your company is needed. And the perspective from I'm working is giving you benefits in order to get the best results for you. And this is one of the benefits for having an outsider inside your organization. I anonymize all the results and the issues, and you do not know that you do know that I run these experiments on the different teams. But you don't know any of my other customers, on which team, which experiment, and so on. You get the results. And in the end, you will get the best fit for your team. And in my opinion, that's one nice thing to have. So basically, when you invest money and you invest time, you try to change people, programmers, into the agile coaches, into the consultants, and so on, within your organization. Who have ever tried to convince the developers to become a technical evangelist? So basically, those guys who is running around the stage and he's popping and making smiles and so on, and he's bringing when he's presenting towards these other programmers, it's okay, because he's explaining code. And I don't know whether you were on the previous talk, and one of the previous talks was great. He was about the technical storytelling, about how the programmers can sell the stories, can tell the stories to the non-technical audience in exactly the manner they will understand, by telling us stories, by creating a communication channels. Do you remember the story about a lunar rover? When I told you that we were testing the protocols for communication in blind, just in case when the video went out. And indeed, we were like having also a night rides. So we were having an EVAs during night with a small lamp, and we were testing those procedures. You know why? Because there was some kind of interference, and we lost sight. We completely lost our crawler. But you know what? We had this covered because we know the procedures. We have a team outside. We have a communication protocol. We know exactly the lingo. We have everything tested. And then we applied those rules, and everything was perfectly fine. And the same tools apply here in Agile. And the same rules from Agile applies to space technology, lunar exploration, and whatever you can imagine in a highly regulated environment. And once time I get the story from, I get the information from one of the one of the biggest Polish financial, so they connect with banks, and they are in the middle of the process. So the merchants are connecting to the service, and the service is connecting with the banks in order to transfer money and to have these card payments and so on. And they told me, we have PCI DSS standard, and we cannot do Agile, Scrum, or whatever you call it. And I said, why? You don't have a plan what to do? No, we have a plan. Okay. So what do you do in the next month? No, we do this. So basically, you do have an iteration of length of 1 month, and you have a plan, and what you cannot do. You know, this Agile stuff, estimation, and so on, is planning and so on. So you do not plan? No, we plan, but we have a manager's plan. Okay, and what's the point of not having that? So basically, I will show you some, in a couple of slides, I will show you a portfolio. I will show you the roadmap for developing a product. And basically, you can apply those rules. It doesn't matter what's the industry and whether it's startup, which is very flexible. You know, a couple of students is working, drinking a beer and having a fun of their lives. And on the opposite side, the government agency. You know, the fun fact, I was trying to incorporate those issues to make the Polish government a little bit more agile. And, you know, they told me, Agile is not going to work in Polish government. And I said, you know, if I can stand and if I can be sent to the moon, the Agile is going to work here. So basically, I was trying, because, you know, I like hard challenges. So basically, I was working with the Polish government, and after a year, I was asked by one of the leading Agile coaches in Poland, Matt, what do you do with this government unit? What was the name? And I told him, so basically I told him that after 1.5 years, it was 1.5 years, I didn't went after the first line of Agile Manifesto. They didn't get that they have to realize that people and interaction is more important than processes and tools. They had a Prince process. It was waterfall. It was nice, and it was great looking on the paper, on the project, Microsoft project. It was perfectly timed and so on, but in real, it wasn't so good at all. So basically, somebody could tell that, okay, so you brought Agile to the government, so you changed the Prince to the Scrum. No. Prince has this very good milestones, steps, so they have steps towards achieving the goal. Why don't you do those steps inside? And we had a Prince, which was mandatory by the contract, but Scrum delivery. A little bit lower, lower that process. We delivered. We had 1 week iterations, and we delivered every week. There was 11 teams back there, and every team was delivering once a week. We get, and the end of the sprint doesn't mean necessarily that we have to present to the customer, because you know our customer don't want to show up every week or something like that. He would prefer to be twice a month. Okay. We were ready to invite him every week, but we presented him when he was at our place, every 2 weeks. But we were ready. And then we moved forward towards the continuous integration, towards the continuous delivery. So we were ready to continuously deliver. And we were delivering, and we were deploying on the production, on the testing server, every commit, every pull request merged. But it doesn't mean necessarily that we have to apply those rules on production. We were ready. We can push and we can send. And when we get the approvals, when we get all the information, when we get the request for change applied, approved, then we put on the production. But we were ready, and that's the most important part. And probably when you invest your own time, not having such a consultant that guides you throughout the whole process, who have seen this kind of struggling and with small government and all kind of organization for a long time, you will probably have this, so your programs won't like the new job, because they want to focus on, they're engineers, you know, they want to focus on getting the job done. They have to be described, and it's exactly the same like in the space industry. The engineers have to have this perfect specification. And I was telling you how important the specification is, because let's get the Mars mission, and I mean the real Mars mission. So if we want to put the man on the Mars, we had to plan the whole trip. And the small adjustment within the rocket So for example, when we get rover, when we get habitat, when we get all the stuff and the cherry, which is the humans inside. So basically, we had to all this make happen before sending the man to the Mars. How it relates with your project? So basically, if they can apply some guidelines, rules, and so on, there's no such thing that you cannot. And in my opinion, that's exactly the same reason why you don't write your CMS. By the way, if you were a programmer, a PHP programmer, you wrote your own CMS and CRM. Maybe not ERP because you didn't know what an ERP system was, but you had an idea, you know, in your head that it would be nice to have this kind of system which connects with the development and so on in one place and so on. And I was once a PHP programmer too, and I, of course, wrote my own CMS and CRM, and I started to write my own issue tracker. By the way, who have here write his own framework? Hands up? Yeah, of course. So basically, it's all the time exactly the same. You reinvent the wheel. And then, when you grow up, you will learn that there's a great CMSs out there. There's a great CRMs, ERP systems, and you do not create your own because your business is not about creating CMSs, unless your business is about creating CMSs. But you will learn that it's easier to take existing CMS and a little bit adjust to your needs. And then if we grow a little bit more, then you will live with the provided CMS, whatever. Maybe you will hire somebody to adjust, and after a while you don't need a CMS all over and you're back to the plain text. Okay. So basically, how the cooperation looks like with the consultant, with the external consultant. The external consultant will pop on your SPM meetings, Scrum planning meetings, and he will sit with you throughout the whole day, throughout the half of the day. It depends on the length of the iteration. He will sit with you, he will listen. Most of the time when I add my customers, I'm sitting on the chair with my iPad, I'm writing the notes, and after the whole planning, we are analyzing the things that I find out during the meetings. And they are trying to convince me that they did this on purpose and so on, and we are having a lot of funny discussion. But in the end, I get this information, and I analyze this information with the people. I suggest, recommend the things in order to fix for the next session, and I help them during this week to find the solutions for the problems that we've encountered during the sessions. And then the next iteration, and we start with the review, then we plan, then we have a retrospect, and on the retrospect we analyze the issues that were raised during the previous iteration, and those issues that were homework to do, and then we try to find whether they learned something or not, and we are in this constantly loop of change, of learning, self-learning, and so on. How often? I think that once per iteration, so I do like 1 week iteration, and it doesn't matter. So for example, I get this information so much, I get this from the team so much time. We had a 1 month iteration, or we had a 2 weeks iteration, and we cannot make it shorter. On the previous talk, I was telling you the story about one of my customers when we changed from 1 month iteration to 2 weeks iteration, and then we move forward into the 1 week iteration. But you know, when you can apply those rules and have a 1 week iteration, building a lunar habitation with like hundreds of systems from completely different field and experts in completely different field, and the astronaut who has to be trained in all those systems to use it and not to kill each other, which is kind of important. So you can apply those rules, and you can have 1 week iterations with your project. It only depends on you. How long? So basically, I'm starting from 2 completely opposite sides. So I start with the management, and I start from the top down, and I start from the ground up. So I work with the teams, one meeting with the team every iteration, like five or six teams in the same time, and then I start with the management in order to get them to know the rules, how it's working in a Scrum and so on, to accept that, and we try to connect with in the middle. From the, maybe not micromanagement, but from inspiring from the bottom level up, and then from understanding from top to down in your presentation. And technical help with the continuous integration and content delivery. So basically, I'm a technical person, and I set up a lot of continuous integration tools, and I've set up a lot of processes that run through the audits and so on. And I can sit with those guys, and I can code with those guys, because I am also a coder. And this is the best thing, because those guys are like, this is not the guy who is like telling us how to manage or something like that, but this is one of our team members. Despite that, I am very rarely on their team, but they always have this feeling that I'm one of you. You know, it also includes some after-hours activities. So basically, everybody knew the Agile Manifesto and so on, and Ken Beck told that this is all about healing the divide between business and programming. And this is one of the most important quotes on the Agile Manifesto. It's not about creating the industry of guys who is like certifying and issuing the professional Scrum Master certificates and giving you a paper for your money and so on. It's about understanding. It's about agility. The name of this is not Agile Manifesto. It's the manifesto of the Agile software development. The flexibility of cooperating, working with your customers. Flexibility. It's about the agility. It's not about the industry of the consultants. It's about you. And I mean that. I'm a consultant, and it's all about you. Okay, I told you the story on the previous talk that I understand Agile in that way. The project management, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, XP, DSDM, whatever, this is only 1/6 of the whole topic. The business, product, roadmap, vision, product owner, and so on, it's also one, kind of large, but one part. Communication, organization, motivation, and teams, it's also one part. This is a soft skills, and also a technical, more technical parts like quality, craftsmanship, microservices, architecture, because sometimes you cannot go faster unless you make some changes in your architecture. And I was giving you an example on the previous talk. So basically, sometimes, and I didn't tell one story, that we made it not by rewriting the software, because this is not going to happen. And I've seen a lot of companies that rewrote the software because there is a new trend in microservices. That's not the way to go. Iterate over and over and create small services and evolve towards a new architecture. It doesn't matter what the architecture, but evolve towards the new architecture. Not rewrite your software, because that's not going to happen. And I've seen a lot of systems that failed, and I know Uncle Bob personally, and he was telling the story that he was in the company that for 10 years was trying to rewrite the system, and they did not rewrite the system. But which developers rewrite the system? Not the worst one. The best one. So they have, for 10 years, they hired the best developers throughout the whole company to rewrite the system, which was never used on the production. Be careful with that. And of course, provisioning, DevOps, processes, continuous integration, and all those goodies that helps us with the other part. Because if you do not have a continuous integration, if you do not have a provision in your system, you don't have automation, test automation, and all those things, it is very hard to create faster releases, to create even faster and shorter iterations, and so on. So basically, when I started working with the company, I tried to introduce the Scrum planning week. So we have a planning, and it's obvious probably most of the teams have planning on a Monday. Here's a review and retrospective in the Friday, and in the Wednesday there's a refinement. Lots of people don't know about the refinement. And this is one of the most important parts and meetings throughout the whole Scrum process. So I know the teams that prefer to have this bulked in one day. And I was working with the one company that have every meeting exactly on Wednesday. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to have these meetings on Monday or Friday, or it doesn't matter. But if you do refinement, so you decompose it, the backlog, you iterate over it, you have a great product owner who is taking his job seriously, and he's prioritizing the words, prioritizing the stories, and he's making acceptance criteria, he's iterating over it, and he's trying to basically give the best outcome out of the backlog, just to prepare you for the planning. And when you go to the planning and the backlog is already ready, and you have issues which falls into three categories: 5 days, 3 days, and 1 day issues, like small, medium, large issues, and you have backlog set, and you have pre-decomposed issues with perfectly set acceptance criteria. When you have this all set before planning, how long your planning will take? 15 minutes? Mostly. And if you have programmers and you have team members, because this is not about programmers. You know, I was referring to the lunar habitat, and we were not programming. We were a little bit, but we were constructing, and I was like building and bricks, and with the rock hammer. Yeah, I got the task to rock hammer for a couple of days in order to make the room for foundations. And it was like, with the rock hammer, yeah, exactly, for 2 days. Great for your back. Okay, but someone has to do that. And if you do that, and people is not making any adjustment and so on, and they focus on delivering the stuff, and they have perfect definition of done, review is not taking 1 hour. It's like 10 minutes. Just show me the system. Okay, it's working. Everything's okay. Everything is done. We're gone. And if you do your refinement good, your meetings will be like the shortest meeting I was attending with one of my clients was like 2 hours with the comments from me. So we were analyzing. There was no too much comments, because for 2 hours there's no such thing. But we were analyzing, and we get this done in 2 hours. And that's what I'm helping the others to do. It's working with the product owner throughout the whole week in order to create, because the next step, and I really do like the next step, I didn't have slides for that, is when you remove the refinement from the whole team meeting, and your product owner is creating, when you hire a technical person as a product owner, he can do a lot of things in his head, and then he can just only take one person, because there's no need on the iOS devices and storyboards and the architecture for the iOS application to have on the same meeting the guy from Android, right? There's no point. It's important to have this. So, for example, product owner will take the Android guys, will have a meeting with them, he gets some issues to the backlog. Then he goes to the iOS guys, he get the information from them, he puts the issues on the backlog, and then he have a very short meeting in order to synchronize, because the iOS guys may want to know what the Android guys are making and so on, and they cross-check, and this is only very short meeting. And if you do those kind of optimization, you will end up with the meetings in your team below an hour, the longest meeting would be retrospective, and I wouldn't recommend to shorten the time of this one. So basically, if you do your process right, you will earn money, you will not lose a lot of money on this process of itself, and it will repay. The consulting, why I find out this, then you can check, you can bulk those issues and so on. Because I run the experiments on several parallel teams, and I find out which one is working better. You can achieve that, but you will, like, on the experimenting, you will be like for 2 years or something like that, and probably you will lose a lot of money during that time. We can create a portfolio throughout your organization. This is the screenshot. This is a picture from one of my customers. Every of those cards is reflecting on one sprint goal. So every team has a sprint goal, which is 1 week iteration, the main goal to achieve. And on this board, there's sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4. First month, second month, third month. So we are seeing the quarterly, 1 quarter, 3 months, on the board, and all of those topics. And there are 9 different colors, and every color is one team, and one team leader is standing on the exactly the same board, before the exactly the same board, every day, and for 10 minutes they're having a little sync-up meeting when they changed it. And the colors of the pins reflect on the risk of not delivering this particular sprint goal by this team to the end of the iteration. And we have collaboration between the 2 teams. I don't know whether you can see, but this there's a pink and green card on site. So 2 teams are working on exactly the same, and we have schedule. And do you know how many teams had to create the whole process in order to get the results like that? I had to run this experiments iteration, and this is like the result of like 10th iteration. When we create epic boards with the issues, with the whole stories. We create in order to visualize with the team. And then we set up the whole ecosystem, the development tools ecosystem, which is kind of big. Do you have a continuous integration server, code repository? This is a quality section, binary repository, production, and environments which is provisioned from Puppet or whatever else. Here's tools for communication, instant messaging, API documentation, and all of those tools you just get on the day 1 when you hire an external consultant, just because he already know. You don't have to learn of those things, because I was learning this throughout several years, and you just get, like, this is Git Flow. How many developers would like to know Git Flow? But this is a simple thing, and if you implement it, you can have completely different tests on every branch family when you have it. And you can run completely different parts and a completely different process, and you can automate over and over, and you can pull request, and you can create a process, and you can integrate pull request and those automation of the process in order to get the feedback and statuses of your builds and so on. And you get like several hundreds of branches within your project, which is completely fine, because all of those branches, maybe not all, but are green. And you don't lose the focus. And you can, public API, you can create, like, you can have visualization, documentation, you can test it. This is like Swagger. I don't know whether you know it or not. You can have mutatory testing. I don't know whether you've heard about it. You can have integration tests, load testing, behavioral testing, test-driven development. You can have smoke testing. You can implement the Sonar Cube, and you can have a guy who will explain you every rule in the Sonar on your code, on your perfect development process. This is actual screenshots from my customers, and this is why it's kind of blurry. So basically, you can have also processes, heavy processes like change management, release management, incident management, like compliance, like SLAs. And this is like very short recap of all of those tools. And just if you hire a consultant, you can go. By the way, here's a great video, Spotify Engineering Culture on YouTube. I encourage you to see how you can create an agile, technical and business and focus on that. And if you want to have one guy who has this knowledge and who guides you, you can achieve that by yourself. But sometimes it's easier, cheaper, and faster to have one guy on board who already knows that. Thank you very much.